This is Jay Martin.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Jay Martin Show. This is Jesse Day from Commodity Culture, temporarily stepping in for Jay. And today's guest is a prominent uranium investor and marketing consultant in the junior mining space, as well as being the host of the Next Big Rush YouTube channel. Fabi Lara, good to see you.
Hey Jesse, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you on the show to dive into uranium, but also the broader commodities complex and energy as well. But one thing that I really want to start things off with and talk to you about is the elections in Brazil, because you are from Brazil. You have been keeping your ear to the ground over there. And before we started recording here, you were saying that the protests against the election are getting so massive and out of control that it could actually cause the elected president to step down. Did you want to maybe walk us through that situation, what you're seeing there, and how you think it's going to impact the country overall?
Sure. So at first, when I first saw that people were protesting, my understanding and belief as a Brazilian was that the current president Bolsonaro, that is being ousted throughout democratic elections, has sort of a section of his electorate that's extremely passionate. Let's just put it this way. And so I expected them to cry about the election results if they were negative, and I expected them to, in one way or another, try to not accept the results. And so at first, when people started to say that there were fraud allegations regarding the election results, I did not believe them whatsoever. However, it has come to light that there are a lot of inconsistencies with the actual election results. So one of the things that's being brought to light is that there have been several, I really mean it, ballot machines. In Brazil, we don't do paper voting. We use machines, which is in and of itself something that should be looked into, because there aren't many countries that do it, and it's a belief of whether you believe or not that a system like that is hackable or can receive some sort of manipulation, right? I have my own belief regarding that, but that's, beyond this conversation. And the problem that is the most pronounced is that there have been many ballot boxes of these machines where there were several votes for one candidate and 0 votes for another candidate. And the actual statistical probability that this would happen in hundreds of them is something like 1 in a quintillion. I'm not even sure if that's a word, right? But you have these electoral sessions, and then you have the actual, machines. And the fact that several of these machines received up to 384 votes for one person and 0 for another actually do raise an eyebrow. And that is one of the things that are being brought up. There are some people that actually have their voting receipts. They're going online to check, the voting results. They can't see their individual vote, but they're checking the voting results, and they are not finding their actual, voting place on the website. That's also being raised. I don't know to which extent that's just a matter of, administration of that being moved to another session and being reorganized. I don't know. But what I do know, and the reason why people should take notice, is that these are statistical and mathematical problems. So the question is being asked, why has this happened? And how is it happening, right? And the Brazilian military has worked on a report. They've built this report, and they will publish and deliver the report tomorrow. So Wednesday, the 9th of November, they're going to publicly come out with this report of their findings of their investigation regarding the past elections. I've never seen anything like this happen in my 36 years of being Brazilian, and I have never seen such inconsistencies. So there's this belief that, the new elected president, being more left-wing, will make things harder. There is, a softening of it because Congress and the Senate are actually quite right-wing, but it also begs the question why people have voted, towards the right for the Senate and the Congress, but to the left for the presidency. So there's this, dilemma. And there's the belief that he's either not going to be able to do very much because the opposition today is so much stronger than it has ever been. But there's also the fact that the election results might be seriously contested now from this military report that might come out. And it's all in the numbers, right? I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know for a fact that this is going to be an issue. But right now, people in Brazil, a large portion of people in Brazil do not have faith in the electoral system, in the actual structure. Beyond that, and what really concerns me as a citizen is that there has been a massive censorship move towards certain personalities that were supporting, the current president. And that to me is very scary because right before I was born, we were under dictatorship in Brazil, so you could not say what you thought. During my whole life, it's been, a free-for-all. You say whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. And now you see people like religious ministers, singers, elected officials, and congressmen and senators being completely silenced and having their accounts suspended off Twitter, off Facebook, off YouTube, because they are posing the question. They're not saying this is fraudulent, we're not going to accept it. They're relaying, some numbers and saying what happened here. So that to me is very scary. I don't have much of my portfolio in Brazil currently, and I would personally wait and see what happens because to me, this is all completely new territory and anything could happen. I was of the opinion that this was a nothing burger, but the way that things are going, it could be a something burger for sure.
Very fascinating. That's actually what I was going to ask you, was the investment question as well. And I think your approach of waiting and seeing how things turn out is definitely the smartest way to go. Maybe you could lay out a couple scenarios for us in terms of how this might influence commodities in particular in Brazil, because I know Lula has spoken quite passionately about mining oil and all of these sorts of things in quite a negative light in terms of not wanting those things happening. Whereas, generally people who are towards the right tend to be more open to resource extraction. So Bolsonaro would probably be better for the commodities complex overall, the extractive industries in Brazil. Would you agree with that sentiment? And how would you see things playing out if one or the other side ends up ultimately retaining power or stepping into power in the case of the former president?
Yeah, I agree with your statement. One thing that I think the general electorate in Brazil has missed is that they are comparing the possibility of 2023 and beyond for the next 4 years to be the same as it was when Lula first came in. So when Lula first came in, Brazil caught the total move of the commodity booms from 2003 up until 2011, right? And so during that time, Brazil did extremely well because it's a commodity-driven country. And because of that, it made no sense for them to actually hinder the progress of the extractive industries, because that's where the money was. And if you're a corrupt politician, you want that to happen in your country. You want things to be extracted because that's where the bribes come from. Let's be honest here. That's the way of the world. And there was still this sort of, this propaganda about being tough on the extractive industries. But one hand is doing one thing, the other hand is doing something completely different, if you know what I mean. And I think people are expecting the same moving forward. However, I wouldn't be so optimistic. The people that are currently being appointed, to the different ministries and different departments of the country are very extreme. And I mean very extreme in the strongest sense. People who have a history of serious ties to communism. And I think that people in general are, downplaying the fact that these people have no respect for private property. Again, it doesn't mean that it will come to play, and it doesn't mean that all of a sudden Brazil is going to become Venezuela. Far from it. As I said, there is serious opposition, and things will not be ignored this time around. However, this situation is extremely fragile because we've never lived this situation that we're living right now with these circumstances, with such a strong polarization of the left and the right, and people in the middle not knowing really what they each stand for and just voting for the guy that promises them, something. And so I would, definitely wait and see, and keep an eye out for things, because one of the things that happened, I think just 2 or 3 days ago, is that Petrobras, the big oil company that is a partly public company, has a massive dividend payout coming soon. I think it's 50% or something like that. And obviously, a lot of people bought into the stock. However, the stock price has since, slid down quite a bit. I think in part because the president of the party that Lula is associated with, so the people that are going to come into power maybe come next January, has actually publicly said that the dividend of Petrobras should not be paid out and should be reviewed. And that, this dividend payout is too much, and that they weren't going to accept this level of profit back to shareholders, that they wanted the people of Brazil to profit from Petrobras and not investors. And that is quite concerning, because these people have a lot of power, and the directorship of Petrobras is usually appointed by the people in power, the president, and things of that nature. So it's quite eye-opening. I think if a massive crisis can be averted, there will be a lot of buying opportunities in Brazil because of this mess. The market hates uncertainty, as we all know. And this is another reason why. I mean, obviously, because it's very close to my heart. It's where I was born, and I still have tons of friends and family there. But I think that, when we start seeing the skies clear out a little bit and we can see where we're headed, then I think there will be a lot of investment opportunities, because it comes back to what I said. If your commodity is in high demand, Brazilians are quite practical. Let's do business, whether we believe in the same thing or not. Everybody wants to make money. And so I believe there will be massive opportunities, but I think we're in that period of time where nobody knows what the political state of the country will be even a week from now, never mind a year from now. But when we define that, then I think the opportunity is going to be, quite strong.
Quick break, then we'll get back to the interview. In the description of this video is a link where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. It's free and I love writing it. This week, for example, what I wrote about was a traditional role in society that we've lost, known as the sacred clown. In historic Lakota culture, for example, and many others, there was a role known as the Hayoka, and the Hayoka's purpose was to make fun of everybody and everything all the time, to prevent egos from running away or people taking themselves or their ideas too seriously. Now, we've lost that role in society today because those people get canceled, and that's a problem. So I write about things like this. I'd love to have you join the team. It's super fun. Link in the description. Now back to the interview. Enjoy.
Well, definitely something to keep an eye on. So let's move from one crisis to another. Let's move over to Europe, where the emerging energy crisis seems to have hit a little bit of good luck with warming weather. It looks like it's going to be a warmer winter than normal, and a lot of liquid natural gas reserves were secured to the point where it actually dropped the price in the short term for some time. However, talk of next winter is already coming up. This is a temporary fix that has come in, And how do you see things developing there? Because it's very fascinating. You know, we have the recent news that Germany is trying hard to keep their 3 nuclear reactors that they were planning on shutting down, keeping them online. You have strange developments like Olaf Scholz traveling to China to meet with Xi Jinping. What's that all about? Apparently it didn't go well either. I don't know if he was trying to secure, commodities from them or what exactly the situation was. But how do you see things unfolding there? I mean, Germany seems to be the poster child of what not to do. How do you think the chips are going to fall into place? Do you think ultimately it's going to come down to keeping people warm in the winter and making sure everybody's fed? Because, of course, there's a very big connection between food and energy. Do you think things will return to sanity at some point and the pendulum will maybe swing in the other direction? Or do you think we're going to see persistent problems for the foreseeable future?
I do believe in the pendulum swinging back eventually. It's what I call the fluff to fur economy, where fluff was we're buying NFTs for $2 million, and the fur is like, okay, we absolutely need oil and coal and gas in order to just survive. Like, we need warmth and we need to survive as a species. Therefore, let's stop with the nonsense. Let's not invest in growth stocks and growth stories and bikes with massive iPads on them. Let's go back to what we need. However, that comes at a cost. And bear in mind, I am no energy expert. I'm a private investor. And so I'm just trying to make my own decisions of where to allocate my own resources. The way that I see this is that this is actually a massive opportunity for people who have not yet entered the energy play. Because what happens especially in the natural gas market, from my limited understanding, is that the actual storage capacity is very, very low compared to what we expect to use every year, every quarter, whatever. My belief is that about a third of Germany's natural gas usage can be stored, right, in their current infrastructure. And so that's, pretty much full. Well done to them. It did come at a cost, and a lot of people have made a lot of money from that first bump. And you have a lot of price weakness because they cannot store it. The same thing happened with oil was it 2020 or 2021 when it went negative? I see, something very similar with natural gas. And it's not that we have plenty and it's easy to get, and the infrastructure is there to serve the population long term. I don't see that happening. I don't see CapEx on anything to do with energy right now. Like, you go and look at natural gas, you look at oil, you look at nuclear, and everybody's just waiting for the other side to blink, right? Nobody is building or expanding capacity massively. And so until we see that, I think energy in general, natural gas, oil, uranium, etc., that's all very much into play. But obviously, if you're a short-term trader, then you've probably caught that move and you're out of it. And I think now is the time to start looking at energy if you haven't done so already. There's a lot of money on the sidelines. And I hate saying that, but it is true. And I think people will realize that, yes, okay, maybe we might be okay so far for this winter, but what happens next winter and next winter and next winter? And a lot of things are happening in Europe, regarding the population being very upset with the fact that they're having to, pay prices that have never been seen, in part, not fully, but in part because of what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. And people aren't going to take it anymore. Human beings are extremely simple in my point of view. We just want to have a little bit of health, wealth, and, well-being. Like, we just want to do well, and anything that cuts through that and, slows us down, we will stand up and rise against it, so to speak, to varying levels of degree, depending on how serious it is and how quickly it comes. And a lot of European Union countries are starting to have, real conflict. So yeah, I think this is probably a good entry point, buying opportunity for people who understand that longer term. We still need a lot of oil. We still need natural gas. I mean, Germany, for goodness sake, they are tearing down their renewables in order to expand their coal plants. How bizarre is that? A country that does not really want to continue with their nuclear program. And it's clean energy, and the infrastructure is there, the knowledge is there. And I think that for a long time, what I mean is, for the past 2 to 3 decades, we've been blinded by this sort of ideology that has completely infiltrated governments. It has completely infiltrated the media. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but you have to stop and think, okay, people are actually hurting. Right? People are going to, not be able to pay their bills. They're not going to be able to feed their families in the same way that they were before. And this is mostly because of decisions that have been made for them, from high above, that had nothing to do with practical life, right? It had everything to do with a belief that hasn't really been proven to be right so far. So there's a lot of pain, I think, happening right now. And I think this is going to continue, especially across Europe. But you can only irritate people so long before they stand up and say, enough is enough. If we need these sources of energy, let's go get them.
Yeah, I think radical political ideology and energy policy aren't exactly the best mix, but that's kind of what we're seeing across the board right now. So it's kind of disheartening, but I'm kind of optimistic for the future as well. I think the pendulum will swing. I think these leaders, we're already seeing Germany burn tons of coal, including dirty coal, which makes no sense at all. But let's move to the cleanest baseload form of power and what I believe is the greatest form of energy on planet Earth, and that is nuclear, powered by uranium. When looking at the landscape of the uranium markets right now, I'd like to first get your answer on what do you see as the main tailwinds currently in place as we sit here today for the thesis? And then also, what do you think it's going to take to bring widespread institutional investment into the uranium space? What do you think it's going to take for the hedge funds, the pension funds, the big funds to really step in, because that could create a dramatic price move to the upside?
I think the generalists will come, to answer your second question, naturally, as long as companies can sort of cross the chasm, right? So in the startup world, there's this notion that you can get to a certain point of growth in users, but then if you can't cross a magic number that nobody really knows what that is, then you die, right? Or if you can actually cross that number, then you go on to be much, much bigger than you could ever imagine. I think regarding that, because there's so much money in the world sloshing around, the fact that Cameco is expanding, let's just put it like that, expanding their market cap with their M&A transaction, that to me is very bullish, because it means that they're even bigger, they're more diversified, they are getting into the business of not only extracting the uranium from the ground, but actually processing it, and there's a lot of money in that. The industry is actually very positive right now for anything that happens after extracting the uranium out of the ground, and the outlook for that going forward for the next at least 15 to 20 years is extremely bullish. And I think that was a good step in the right direction, which I think naturally will attract a lot of institutional investors, because it's simply a large enough company and a liquid enough company that institutions can put their money in. And that's my view. I don't think that it's bearish that Cameco is going into different places. I think it's bearish for the people who were holding, certain large scale projects that they wish was bought out by Cameco, and everybody's been sort of crossing their fingers and expecting for a takeover bid. It hasn't panned out. I have certain knowledge that they They've been following the story since the very beginning, before you and I ever heard of, big uranium being found in the Athabasca Basin. They already knew it because they were already there at the other side of the basin. And they haven't made their move regarding buying more pounds in the ground, right? So they were kind of signaling to the market, we're not interested, at least for now. We're not interested in buying more of the mining stuff. And they were, sitting on more and more cash. And I think this move should attract institutional investors in due time. But the thing that really excites me about uranium right now, answering your first question, is the contracting cycle has begun. And I feel like we're in the first few seconds of this race. As per, Chemical, they're coming out with news releases, left and right, and saying, we're contracting this, we're contracting that. The terms are hush hush. But we've already crossed 100 million pounds being contracted this year so far, and we're still in November. So I don't know what the situation will be from now until the end of the year, but that's massively bullish. And this is the beginning of the contracting cycle, right? So back, I believe, in 2011, when right before Fukushima happened, there was a contracting cycle that had actually pushed the price to a more amenable level after the crash of 2007. And I think it was kind of hovering above $60 or something between 60 and 65. And then Fukushima happened, it kind of canceled everything. But inventories are very low historically, and utilities are finally coming to the table. The Chinese, who, by the way, waste no time for better or worse, they have come to the table and they're starting to contract. And don't forget, the Chinese are actually expanding their nuclear fleet by a large number. And so this is all very bullish for uranium. That story that we used to hear many years ago of, when this happens, uranium will fly. When that happens, uranium will fly. A lot more than what we imagined back then is already happening right now. And I am very bullish. I am not, selling uranium. I sell uranium to buy more uranium. I want to get out of 100% uranium in my portfolio. And I probably will be buying, some oil stocks and some gold stocks going forward, but it's very difficult for me to find something that fundamentally is happening right now, but the price hasn't caught up with it yet. And people complain. People who have been in this trade are not happy with what they're seeing, in their developers, for instance, or even in the spot price. However, that's what makes a market. The fact that you're saying that something is more valuable, and it is due to be more valuable in the next few months versus what the price shows, like that is how you invest, right? You see this disconnect and then you make a vote. What do you think is going to happen next? And if you think that the fundamentals will actually be reflected in the price because the supply and demand imbalance will show more and more, then you place your bet and you wait. And people aren't usually as patient as me or some other folks that have been in this trade for a long time. All I have to say is just look at the fundamentals, try to guess what happens next, and just act accordingly.
Yes, and you've been investing in uranium since 2014 when it was really, 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 really out of favor. I mean, even today, we have a pretty robust community on Twitter for uranium, but the mainstream financial news shows aren't talking about uranium. I was talking to my friend Patrick Karim the other day, and he said, someday there's going to be a Michael Saylor for uranium. It's going to be some guy with green uranium eyes, and he's going to be talking about mortgage your house and buy uranium and all this sort of stuff. And he said, when we get there, then you'll know we're getting somewhere near a top, but we're not even anywhere close yet. So I'm also very bullish. I want to switch over to gold equities now because you touched on that, and we also spoke before recording. You thought gold equities were looking very undervalued these days. Did you want to expand on that and let us know how you're approaching that sector?
Sure. So what I've started to look at, and if anybody here has, a good gold stock that they're looking at, please comment below, because we like that kind of engagement and we like to always learn about news stories. There are a lot of gold companies and I couldn't possibly keep on top of all of them. But what I'm starting to see is my basic bread and butter. I like early stage development companies to late stage discoveries. So a company that has, pounds in the ground, or I say pounds in the ground because of uranium, right? So go ounces in the ground, and they're sitting on conservative NPVs that are much, much larger than the current market cap, especially if they're sitting on a good amount of money and they won't need to come to the market, because coming to the market right now might not be a great deal unless you want to offer a private placement, to myself and other people with 5-year warrants. And then in that case, I'm all for raising money, obviously, to get the cheap goods. But in general, I see, quite a number of companies with resources that are in all sorts of jurisdictions. However, their market caps do not reflect the value that they have in the ground. They reflect the disbelief and lack of patience that, people have right now in the markets. And I mean, at the end of the day, you have all sorts of moments in the market, right? And so the bigger issue in the market that I see right now is that I don't see any new entrants. I don't see new people right now coming into gold. I don't see new people coming into silver. I don't even see many people coming into uranium right now. It's all, the same club that was here 6 months ago at the very minimum. And that doesn't stay like that forever. I know it feels like that right now, but I have a feeling that the sentiment in the market is very similar to what we had in late 2015 in the gold and silver markets. People were throwing in the towel. And then especially in Canada, you have, people selling off this period because of tax loss selling harvesting. And then you get amazing opportunities to buy now. And, in 2016, if people want to look it up, you just pick any decent gold company and you'll see that they tripled or more within maybe 6 months or something like that. It was, quite the rally. I see the same sort of sentiment. Obviously, because I almost feel like we're living in a time of crisis and gold has not behaved in the way that many people would have expected, that the disbelief in gold companies as a result of that may be warranted. But we know that gold is still very expensive to pull out of the ground. And you don't see costs getting any lower. And we do know that the market every now and again gets very, very tough, and then it gets very, very loose. And that's the bet that I'm going to start to make towards the end of this year, is to get into gold stocks. And I like them to not be completely new, like pre-discovery. I like for them to be able to have proven something up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Fabi. It's been an amazing conversation. For those who want to hear more from you, where should they go online?
Sure. They can go either to my YouTube channel, The Next Big Rush, or they can follow me on Twitter at The Next Big Rush.
Great. Well, awesome having you on, and look forward to talking to you again and hopefully continuing the conversation.
Pleasure's all mine, Jesse. Thank you.
All right, thank you for watching this interview. Now, 3 things before I let you go. Number 1, I publish a weekly newsletter and I love writing it. I share my biggest takeaways and action items from the conversations that I have on this channel. In addition, my thoughts on current events, economic events, political events, and you can subscribe for free. Just hit the pinned comment right beneath this video, or just go to jmartin.club and you can subscribe on the website. I'd love to have you join the team. Number 2, ad revenue from this channel is donated to an organization that is super close to my heart called Zero Ceiling. Now, Zero Ceiling's mission is to end youth homelessness, and the way they do this is by giving at-risk urban youth the opportunity to relocate to beautiful wilderness areas and then provide them with supportive housing, career training, and just generally positive influences on their life. I love what they do. Check them out if you're interested. And number 3, if you prefer to listen to my content as opposed to watch it, you can find me wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just search for The Jay Martin Show. All right, thanks again.